Welcome back to Tabletop Assault. I'm Ross, and I thought I'd do a wee video today looking at the point changes and Thousand Sons and Grey Knights Codex today, just to give a bit more of my thoughts on both these, both the advantages they might bring and the concerns that I can see on them. So let's have a look at these changes and upcoming codexes. First up, we have the Mighty Land Raider, a bit of a contentious unit in 8th edition, just because of how the points worked with it. They just kept reducing it to try and make this unit work. At the moment we're looking at a 15 to 50 point reduction for it, 15 from its standard base, but they said that all weapons would be included in it, so that kind of works out. I think if you're to take Melta stuff and all the stuff, other equipment, it's kind of almost the 50 point mark reduction. So that seems pretty good. But the problem is with the issue with the model itself is the durability of it, for one thing, is high, that it does have loads of wounds, toughness, a great save, but like anything it still can be targeted down. It doesn't have an invul save and no way to really reduce the amount of wounds that it does suffer. So I think to mitigate this one, I wouldn't give it an invul save, I would give it a sort of reduction in the amount of wounds, similar to sort of Death Guard. That might go a long way to keeping the Land Raider on the field a bit longer. And it's also a bit of a master of none, you know, it's a gun platform, but there's other gun platforms that do this much better for cheaper because they're a very concentrated gun platform role, and it's a transport. So in some way it doesn't do either of these things particularly well. Now, if it had a bit more rules where its, you know, durability could be made better, that would be very handy. And maybe if it offered a bonus to people transporting inside it, for instance, if you could charge from within a Land Raider, you know, you disembark and then you can charge after it's moved, that would give it a lot more purpose to it. But at the moment I just find that it's a little bit of a master of none here, and it's beginning to show. So we just need to have a little bit more think that maybe it's the rules in Land Raider, not the points. But then again, if you reduce anything by a certain amount of points, it does become efficient. Now we're going to have a look at the Storm Speeder next. It's looking at about a 15 point reduction per unit option, and the issues with, and overall I think that's actually quite good. But the problem with this one again is its durability. It's giving up durability for mobility. Now this is quite good for the Melta, because you want to be mobile and right very close to your opponent so you can get the pure Melta benefits. But ultimately when it comes to firepower, sometimes you really just want those ones that can hunker in the backfield, maybe sit on an objective or somewhere where they can get the most benefit from cover, and they can do still a lot of damage. There is a lot to be said about being able to command the field, especially with line of sight blocking stuff you can get around. That really does help as well. But again, these Storm Speeders are still vulnerable to being shot down because they're not the toughest units in the world. The point reduction, you know, it can do these well depending on how many points it gets reduced by. 15 points, will it become useful? Maybe. I still think they do put out a lot of damage, and will we see more of them on the field? I don't think they've become so an auto take, but 15 points per one is not bad. On to Necrons next with their Immortals. Now the point production was a bit of an odd one how it's worded in their post. Originally it said that it's going to be 4 points, the Immortal is going to be 4 points more than a mere Warrior, and that seems a bit odd because they're already there, with Warriors costing 13 points and Immortals costing 17 points. I'm going to guess that, and I think they may have confirmed this in some of the comments, they've just making the Tesla version free, so it's not really the Immortals getting a point reduction, it's one of their weapons are kind of becoming a reduction. But we'll maybe see more details of this once the actual book comes out. But what is the problem with Immortals that makes them probably getting reduced? Is that they have got their spot contending with Necron Warriors, and Necron Warriors fill an important role in that they're just hard to eliminate. The Resurrection Protocol and other units able to keep them alive means that they can bog down on points and just be a real nuisance to bring down. Immortals may be slightly tougher on an individual basis, but Warriors are cheaper and you can take a horde of them, and that really benefits Resurrection Protocol significantly more. So on that side, it really comes down to Immortals and their firepower. Now the firepower is more significant than Necron Warriors, which is fine, but when they sort of reduced the efficiency of Tesla carbines, when you couldn't benefit to try and make it cause more hits on modified versions of 6, now it's just modified versions of 6 rather than unmodified. Nope, that's worded badly. Now it's only on unmodified rolls of 6, as it used to be modified rolls of 6. Now we don't get that benefit, and that reduces the efficiency of Tesla hugely, massively. It used to be a go-to, now it's less so. So I can see why the logical choice would be to reduce the points of Tesla Carbine. Does that make Necrom Immortals more valuable than Warriors? On a level, I'm probably going to say not. Necrom Warriors still do their role well, which is a high blob amount that become tough to move. You will still see Immortals probably as your third troop choice in battalions, because you don't want 60 group, 3 lots of 20 Necron Warriors. You might want 2 to go up the field. 3 maybe a bit excessive, but then again, some people might play it. So, do I think that sorts them out? Not really. I think we still need a bit more clarification on that one, if it's just going to be the Tesla Carbine, or is the Immortals going to see a 1 or 2 point reduction. Wraith units, so this is your Craftworlds ones, they are being reduced by 3 points a piece, it looks like. Issues with this one is that the combat unit can't really hit that hard, with the axes. They don't do particularly well. They're -1 to hit, strength 7, random damage makes them incredibly unreliable, and then the single blade one only does 1 damage, though you do get an extra attack with them. Simply put, as for attack and combat stuff, they can easily be bogged down by horde units, and when they do attack something, they're not strength 8, they're minusing to hit, and they're not a preset damage, which makes them just far too unreliable. I don't think this is a point reduction issue. I think with them it's a rule one, so they need to be updated. They shouldn't be hitting at -1. They can maybe hit strength 7, maybe strength 8. They need a set damage though, and certainly with the single blade version you may get loads of attacks, but it's just not enough in my eyes. With the ranged version, the D-Scythe is terrible. I don't even look at it, I wasn't that impressed. The Wraith Cannon is quite good though. If you get into the right position, it can do a heck of amount of damage, which I like, and it does actually not bad in combat either. They're not like some units where they're just hitting at strength 4 -0 1 damage. They can actually do a wee bit of damage in combat when they need to defend themselves. So I can see the ranged version doing quite well. The Wraith Cannon, if you deploy it in the right way, will be devastating to certain units, and then they can fight off a bit in combat. But with the combat variant, I'm just not convinced by the war gear. I think they need a rule change, not a points reduction. And finally we come to Genestealers. They're said to be a big upgrade on this one. So they are getting a points reduction, it looks like, by 2 points. And honestly, when I look at issues with this one, I don't see much issues when it does come to Genestealers. They were already something, if I was playing Tyranids, I would take at least one big blob of them, and there would be a lot of synergy units that would be able to justify their cost. And once you get them into combat, they can do their role very, very well. So having them slightly cheaper is great. The problem I think with some of the infantry when it comes to Tyranids is just trying to justify a few of their upgrade costs. These are horde units, you don't want them to be so expensive, so when you take upgrades to them, and they just don't become as efficient. So maybe it's more in that line we need to have a look at, but overall, point reduction for Genestealers, great. I was already taking them, might take a few more now. And finally we have a look at the upcoming codexes. This is for Thousand Suns and Grey Knights, and again I think they're absolutely knocking it out the park when it comes to the front covers of these codexes, which looks fantastic. Interesting that a lot of them actually seem quite similar with central character than other ones around them, but I still absolutely love the artwork. I think it looks great. So, issues with the codexes that they currently kind of have that I'd like to see addressed, probably won't all happen, but let's just speak about them anyway, is of course in the Grey Knights 2 wounds are needed, so let's get those wounds updated ASAP, and I think that'll give a lot more lease to the Grey Knights. No Primaris, we may see one possibly in Crow. There was a hint that we might have seen him in an update, and I think that the Rubik Marines and Thousand Suns are getting an HQ update. I would be surprised if we didn't see a Grey Knight one as well. It's similar to Death Guard, who got one extra HQ choice. I think that's what they're going to be doing with a lot of these codexes that might not have anything in addition. They might go, here's an extra HQ. Speculative on that one when it comes to Crow, but there was rumours of it in previous updates. And finally, the Grey Knight range in general is actually quite an aged one. I think most of their models are from 5th edition, with only one being, is the one from the Triumvirate, I forget his name off the top of my head, being the latest model for Grey Knights. So in general, Grey Knights their model range doesn't do too bad now, but when you compare it Astartes wise, their size is beginning to show a wee bit, as in they're not to scale. So yeah, Grey Knights I think could do with a big update, but it's probably going to be Primaris. Me and David fight about this a lot. He's like 0 Primaris Grey Knights, and you know, it's an ideology that Games Workshop have. It's going to be Primaris the way forward. If they decided not to with Grey Knights, I would be very intrigued to see how that goes narrative-wise. But you never know. They are receptive to how people enjoyed Primaris. But I would be very surprised if the Grey Knights, when they get new models, they aren't Primaris. But I don't think that's going to happen yet. As for Thousand Suns, well, it's the same thing. 2 wounds needed. Rubrics would become very durable and have a much better reason for taking them over Zangors. They wouldn't be cheap, but they would be incredibly durable, and their bolters are Inferno bolters are nothing to shy at. Limited data sheets. Losing units such as Havocs and Obliterators hurt Thousand Suns a lot in terms of damage potential. Just not having that range support, plus Thousand Suns sometimes struggle to take out things that are very tough, like vehicles. It can be a bit of a struggle for them, unless they bring Magnus to flip everything he can find. And finally, as odd units, Thousand Suns do not get as many units when released than Deathguard did, and in Demon Engines it really shows. You can see this picture that we got with the announcement, and it has Helldrakes and a Forge Fiend, and I'm a bit like, they just don't come off as Thousand Suns. I don't know what, I see Automata and they just don't come out as something that screams Thousand Suns to me. I think I've said this a couple of times, it's the Siren Dreadnought from Forge World. Give that 40k rules and just about every Thousand Sun player will probably eat it up. They did confirm we are getting a new unit for Thousand Suns. It's going to be an HQ choice. That'll help. I think something that's maybe not so Psyker heavy, that might be something to lead would be good, but it's probably going to be a Psyker as well. See if it's simply reroll ones to wound, it's Lieutenant. I will laugh because that seems to be almost a reoccurring theme, but I think it's more going to be like the Death Cards unit, where it was more trying to help out other units and do a different rule. Maybe it might help other units perform psychic abilities, and if it did that, I would be very thankful. And there is my thoughts on the point changes and the Thousand Suns and Grey Knights Codex. Overall, point changes without seeing all of them is kind of hard to tell. We can look at individual bases like this, and you can see that sometimes it is just a problem with the unit rather than the actual point reduction itself, and in other cases it does some good and it will give them a new lease of life. If I was speculating the Genestealer one, is that I think they reduced it because they might reduce slightly by like a point the other troop choices, and they need to give Genestealers a little bit more of a reduction to justify them. But that is pure speculation. When it comes to codexes, it was very interesting to hear that they actually were due to have these codexes out already. I think they confirmed that in the Facebook one, which is sort of admitting that there is definitely production issues. We knew that with the AdMech one, but it's having long-term issues, which ain't good, but let's face it, in the world we live in, that is hardly surprising. But very interesting to see in them. I think when it comes to 40k, we know that we're getting Adeptus Sororitas, we're getting Orcs, now we're getting Thousand Sons of Grey Knights. That to me is probably a few months in terms of production. After that, we're probably going to see a summer of Age of Sigmar, and then possibly back to 40k, which would be quite nice. I'm no Age Sigmar people will be very excited coming up, and I'm just excited to see what maybe comes later down the line for 40k. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the stuff announced today. Please comment, share, like and subscribe, and we'll see you on our Tabletop Assault Battle Report.